The proposed budget for 2009 for the National Endowment for the Humanities is $144 million and change. So that's for everything they do. $20 million is just for We the People, designed to educate people, educate students and Americans what century the Civil War occurred and things that so many students don't know anymore. But $20 million donation to a humanities department is extraordinary. It's just extraordinary. You just don't get that kind of money. I mean, the scientists and the law schools and the business schools, they roll in that all the time. I mean, that's not anything terribly unusual for a business school to get this kind of donation, particularly top 20, top 25 business school. No one gives this kind of money to history departments. I mean, believe me, it's just unheard of, or literature departments, or religious studies departments. So a $20 million donation takes the people who are in charge, and I think Prince Alwaleed chose very wisely to choose Georgetown in particular, for all the obvious reasons. It's here in town, it's close to the embassies, it has the prestige of an old and venerated institution. It's a Catholic institution, in name at least, and therefore inoculates him to some degree. He's, what are you talking about? They're pro-Muslim. He's a bunch of Jesuits over here. They don't know anything about Islam. I'm just here to hand out some change to my friends. But what it does, and come back now to the case of John Esposito, who's the head of the center, is that it gave a guy like John Esposito an opportunity to really be somebody. And Martin Kramer, who, again, a scholar whose work, Ivory Towers on Sand, is just must-reading if you want to understand what's occurred in Middle East studies, points out that Esposito was pretty much in the hinterlands before this, and he spent most of his career, a good bit of his career at the College of Holy Cross up in Massachusetts, comes down to Georgetown and really adopts, before the donation from the Prince, a view that is very soft on Islamism. So that Esposito, John Vole, who is his right-hand man there, and various other scholars were arguing back in the 1990s that Islamism was in fact a path to democracy, that Hamas would be one day a democratic movement, and that we really didn't need to worry about Islamism because these people were reformers. That's why the Saudis hated them, after all, right? They were reformers. They were going to upend this old system. Well, to be sure, they're reformers of a sort, if you want to stretch the meaning of the word. They're reformers with bombs, guns, and airplanes and everything else. But that kind of scholarship never cost him. I mean, he's still, Karen Hughes was reading his books and recommending them. Jim Glassman is there now. I know him some from years ago. I don't know if he's had time or the will or the way to do anything about that. Or if he's had time left to do it. But it never harmed him. It never harmed his reputation. Quite to the contrary, it helped him surely land this enormous Saudi gift. Let me close with a couple of words about what has happened in Middle East studies at one particular institution that you doubtless know about, which is Columbia. Columbia is now the home of Rashid Khalidi. Compare his scholarship to Bernard Lewis if you want to see what's occurred in the past 30 years to Middle East studies. But recently, just last year, Columbia granted tenure, Barnard College did, to Nadia Abu El-Hajj, a lady whose 2001 book, Facts on the Ground, denies an ancient Hebrew presence in Jerusalem. Doesn't say there were no ancient Hebrews there, but they were just one of many passing tribes, and it was basically a Canaanite city, and on and on and on. And it's been eviscerated by professional archaeologists. It's been reviewed very, very harshly, again and again. But she was tenured last year. And really, I shouldn't say but she was tenured. I should say that's why she was tenured. Because in Middle East studies today, it is precisely that kind of resume and that kind of pseudo-scholarship that wins you tenure at prestigious universities. Her project is part of the project of modern Middle East studies, which is very obviously, and it's very transparent. They don't really make that much of a secret of it, to deny the legitimacy of the modern state of Israel. Because we can argue that the ancient Hebrews are just one of many passing tribes and just happen to still be around today, and you went back, well, then you've stolen the land, you see. And so then we can show scholarly and scholarly discourse that the land has been stolen. And this is their enterprise. I mean, they're really not very shy about saying that. Coming up for tenure this year is a guy named Joseph Massad, who's intellectually, I'm going to go on a limb. Intellectually, he's basically a knuckle dragger compared to Nadia Abdul-Hajj. What I mean is, he's a thug. He's an intellectual thug. She was very smart. I've never seen a picture of Nadia Abdul-Hajj, but I understand she's really quite striking. Dresses to kill me, flies to Harrods to do her shopping and this kind of thing. Joseph Mossad, leaving aside his physical appearance, writes for far-left magazines like Counterpunch. He regularly refers to Israel as a racist state. He regularly calls for Israel to basically cease to be a Jewish state. And he does this again and again and again and again. The upshot of that is it's made him more of a liability for Columbia. It's one thing to tenure this beautiful young archaeologist. It's quite another. She's really an anthropologist, but that's neither here nor there. It's quite another to tenure someone who spouts off his mouth constantly, you would think. Last year, he was actually denied tenure. He has friends in high places. All of the people in the big guns in Middle East Studies went to bat for him, and he's going to get a second chance. I don't know how it's going to end. We heard a rumor last year he was not going to be given tenure, that it was a quid pro quo with Abu-al-Hajj. Now she's gotten tenure. He's been given a second chance. I mean, you can't be surprised if he gets tenure this fall. Who knows? I don't know. I don't have any information on that at all. Let me close quickly with just a quote from Bernard Lewis. Most of you probably know who he is. He's now 92 or 3 years old, professor emeritus at Princeton, a man who oversaw the dissertations of an entire generation of superb Middle East scholars. Most of them are probably in think tanks at this point because they've been sort of chased out of universities. But a man who is a really quite extraordinary scholar by anybody's standard, knows all of the languages, an extremely accomplished person. Speaking this past April, he said, and this was from Congressional Quarterly, and I'll just read the sentence that the author used to lead up to Lewis. One of the world's foremost Islamic scholars warned Friday that Middle Eastern studies programs have been distorted by, quote, a degree of thought control and limitations of freedom of expression without parallel in the Western world since the 18th century, and in some areas longer than that. This is not a man given to hyperbole, by the way, either. He's very understated, in fact. And someone who, at every opportunity, defends Islam and says that that moderate Muslims do exist. I mean, this is not a radical anti-Muslim scholar. This is by no means a man who is Islamophobe, as the word is now. Lewis went on to say, it seems to me it's a very dangerous situation because it makes any kind of scholarly discussion of Islam, to say the least, dangerous. Islam and Islamic values now have a level of immunity from comment and criticism in the Western world that Christianity has lost and Judaism never had. That's exactly right. I think part of the reason that's the truth is the Saudi money that gives such a megaphone to those practitioners of Middle East studies at elite institutions who really set the pace for the rest of the field. So if you take a field that's already been intellectually eviscerated, in which nihilism is dogmatically promulgated, and you suddenly give these people an enormous sum of money by the standards of their contemporaries, then you have a terrible problem on your hands. And this is where we are today in Middle East studies. So, here we go. Thank you.